Welcome to Grace Among Us, the podcast where we unearth the many faces and places of grace and share stories of the power of grace in our human lives. Our desire is that this will inspire you to see grace in your own life and share it with others.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Grace Among Us. My name is Carri, and I am a sustained success coach. I help high achievers make space and enjoy the ride. And one of my most very favorite things to do is to bear witness to God's grace, in addition to talking about grace. And I am here with my dear friend, Ebony Gilbert.
Good day, Carrie Adcock. I'm Ebony Gilbert, as Carrie mentioned, and we get to talk about grace. I too enjoy witnessing grace and picking up on it and seeing it and giving it and receiving it. And I can't think of a better way to spend my afternoon than talking about it with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. As we do not pre-plan these, and we get together from North Carolina and Virginia currently, and just either have a question or two ready, or just come up, have an idea about grace, because grace is everywhere. And really our intention, and I'm using please, Ebony, if I'm overstepping.
Oh, no, I'm agreeable. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Our intention is just to continue to point to grace, because so we were talking a little bit before this about God being our personal assistant.
Yeah.
And not really being our personal assistant. So this idea that, grace comes to us. I don't have to be anything but who I am. I don't have to be any more. I don't have to be any less. I'm probably not even deserving of the grace that's coming to me. It doesn't matter. Grace is, grace comes because it comes for everyone. However, there's this fine line between receiving grace and doing my part, or the footwork. And sometimes I'll ask for grace, but really what I want is for God to go get me a cup of coffee.
Mhm.
And
Drop it in your lap.
yes, please drop it in my lap, like on the second Tuesday of next month, because that's when I really need it. So I don't know what the question is in there.
I don't think there has to be a question. I mean, I certainly have some thoughts on what you're saying. When you say God's not our personal assistant, can you talk more about that? I mean, I get the whole coffee metaphor, but obviously God's not going to show up at the door with, winged seraphims carrying Starbucks. Like, give me a real example of what that could look like.
So that's a great question, Ebony, because as you reflected personal assistant, it's like, well, we can ask him for help on all things,
Absolutely.
right? The difference of where he's not a personal assistant is I can ask him for help, but I don't get to tell him how he's going to help me. And oh, so often I want to.
Right. Right. I get you. It's like you're praying for a job, but you hadn't completed any interviews or any applications, haven't updated your resume in 6 years. You're like, God's not answering my prayers. You didn't apply. There's plenty of jobs out there. That's the first example that came to my mind. The other thing that came to mind when we were just talking about this is, see, help doesn't always show up the way you want it to show up. Flipping around, what if we were God's personal assistant?
Mm.
And in our service to him, in our diligent service to him, it changes our lens. And then we can see the grace showing up. I just went and got new glasses today. And I guess I'm so blind at this point, I need 2 pair. So I have computer glasses. And I also have progressive glasses. I've never worn progressive glasses before, but there are different tiers on the lens. I just learned this at Target Optical. Thank you, Target. That the top is for distance, the very thin middle is for intermediate, and the bottom is for reading close up. And you have to adjust your head. You have to lift your head to see things a little bit farther, and you have to lower your head to see things. And depending on where you have your head, where you set your sight, even though you're wearing the corrective lens, you've did the things to get it, you've made the purchase, you're wearing them, they're on you, you're clothed with it, you're equipped, you have the resource. If you don't set your sight just right, they won't work. And I didn't think about this till just in this moment. And I'm not sure how I'm going to tie all this together, but I'm thinking, as we're God's personal assistant, it automatically adjusts our sights. And we're already equipped with the grace. We're already equipped with the presence. We're already equipped with the resources that he provides to us. But once you adjust your sights so you can see what he will have us to see, grace, favor, the blessing, the miracle, the whatever, and it could be something that he's showing us to do for someone else. It doesn't always have to be a receipt. It could be a giving, an offering. I feel like we'll be able to see more clearly what we need and what we want. I'm all excited on the inside right now because this progressive lens things, I was sitting there with the lady and I was fascinated that I could wear these really expensive glasses and they still not work if I don't do my part.
Yes.
Because I thought my part was just putting them on. Not enough. So to anyone out there who wears progressive lens and you have some type of advice for me on how to navigate this without getting vertigo and falling because I'm not looking in the right place, let me know. But I think our vision when it comes to spirituality and how we navigate life has a lot to do with how we set our sights.
I think it has everything to do with how we set our sights. I agree. I think it's such a beautiful example of that. We are already equipped. We have all we need. You know, you could refer to daily bread, right?
Yes.
We are given everything we need in this day, fully equipped. I used to say I have my, my quiver. Like everything in my quiver is exactly what I need. However, if I don't reach back and pull it out, I could have 50,000 things back here, but it's like this, it's like a collaboration.
Yeah.
And part of that is a big part of that is where we set our sights, where our attitude is. And practice.
That
Right?
part.
Yes. Like a month from now, Ebony, or maybe less, maybe like a couple days, I don't know. You're gonna be like, "Oh, you got them dialed in. You know how to work with these 3 different visions that you got going on and
And
where your
that's what
head's
the
gonna
lady
go."
said, Carrie. She said, with time, you'll grow to the point where this will just be second nature. And I'm
Yes.
sitting here thinking about my maturity in God and my maturity in seeing how he's working in my life and in other people's life. As I grow, as I mature, as we grow, we mature, as this podcast grows and matures, the sites become a little bit more fluid and a little bit more automatic and more natural. I'm sure people who've been listening to the podcast for a while can hear how we started
Mhm.
and listen to it now and maybe listen to it a year from now and hear differences, right?
Mhm.
There's growth, there's maturity. And I think grace is one of those things that as you mature, as you grow through the growing pains, with some time, set your sights, and it becomes less of a automatic, less of a manual adjustment. Oh, lift your head, lower your head, turn your head. Don't do this, don't do that. Take them. You just know that sometimes I've got to lift up a little bit. I've got to rise above my normal eye level to see beyond this. Does that make sense?
It
In my
makes a
mind,
lot
it
of
does.
no, it makes a lot of sense. I I don't think time that over time I have a spiritual mentor who says to me, "Well, you just weren't," if I have some sort of insight or like, "Oh my gosh, why did I do that for so long?
Mhm.
Like, why did I keep doing that thing?" And she'll kindly say, "Well, you just weren't ready. You
Mm.
weren't ready to see it." And sometimes I can nod my head and say, "You know what? You're right." And sometimes that is the last thing
You don't wanna hear
that
that?
I wanna hear. However, this is how I grow in spirituality, and it's not my timeline.
Mhm.
There are bigger things at work than how I'm gonna get from A to B, and I forget that. And, that's part of, I think, as we began this, it was like, I can ask God for help, but I don't know what it's gonna look like. Not only do I not know what's best for me, I also don't know what the timeline is. And
Yeah,
so it's that's part of the setting the sights too, is,
absolutely.
I live in a world where we have 7 days a week and we have 24 hours a day and we have 365 days a year and we have all these markers for time and all these measurements, but they're all worldly.
Mhm.
God doesn't work on a schedule. And part of the biggest sight, one of the biggest breakthroughs for me was to adjust my glasses that time is irrelevant. Like, I cannot it may feel urgent, the thing that's going on or the discomfort I have or the help that I want may feel very urgent, but it's resting in the idea that it's not my timeline. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. So we want everything to be linear.
And yesterday,
Yeah, yeah. Hey, what happens when you need recalibration?
like, to put my glasses back on?
Or put it this way, what happens a year from now when you go to put those glasses on, they no longer work?
Mm, I gotta get a new prescription.
Gotta do a new prescription.
Mhm.
You gotta go back to the guy who made the glasses or to someone who's able to refit you, reassess you. And I think we have a daily responsibility to check in with the big guy and say, "Hey, recalibrate me,
Mhm.
fix me, get me right." You know, if my sights are off, if my vision has changed, if I see better up close than I did long term, get me so to the point where my vision is corrected so I can see the things you will have me to see.
So it's
I don't think
asking
it's a one and done.
it's absolutely not a one and done. Yeah, there's no, it's all temporal to begin with. Like, w our experience is temporal, right?
Yeah.
Um, I just learned today or yesterday, I don't remember, like, all the cells in our body regenerate for the most part, like, in 3 months.
Yeah.
So, we actually took a little bit of a break on recording,
Mhm.
episodes, and actually, the last time I saw you, like, based on what I just learned today, like, I was a whole different person, Ebony. Physically, I didn't even have these cells. So, so that's such a sticky point of, like, I'm gonna arrive, I'm gonna graduate, I'm gonna get this, and that's not the point.
Mm-mm.
The point is to continually say, "You know what? I need glasses, and let me check this out." You
Yeah.
know? Am I seeing okay, or do I need an adjustment?
Mhm.
Do I need to just be real and say, "You know what? This isn't working. Now I gotta go back to the specialist
Mhm.
who can help me."
Great physician.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I think it's I keep saying I think as if I'm doubting myself and I'm not. So I'm gonna cut out the I think part. I believe, I feel that some things you're not meant to see clearly, you know? Even with corrective lens, even with proper vision. If think about this. If a year ago you knew everything that was coming up, would you still walked into it?
Not no, ma'am. No, I woulda
Right.
looked for a different route.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the time that it happened at the time that it happened, I was prepared. Didn't feel
Correct.
good. I didn't like it.
But you were
However,
ready.
I was ready. Was ready. And that's the that's the other piece of, like, wanting to see what it's gonna look like 3 months from now. It's not even possible.
Mhm. Sufficient are the worries for today. I have enough today to worry about.
Exactly.
Enough.
Exactly. And grace only operates
Here,
it for me, yes. It only operates I can only see it in this day.
today.
Yes. I may see how vast it is as I reflect back.
Right.
I can look at some of the things that have happened that, uh, there was almost a secondary plan that
Mhm.
came with grace, right? It's like, "Oh my gosh, not only did I get to walk through something, but I might have had to let go of something or something fell away that was actually probably more important." Um, so grace is vast, but it only operates for me here.
So when you reflect back on how it's worked in the past, when you get that vast open field view of it, the
Mhm.
hindsight view of it, for me, that gives me hope that even if I can't see tomorrow, he's going to show up tomorrow because he's done it before. So I know enough. I've got enough growth and maturity and post vision. I've got enough under my belt to not question tomorrow or 3 months from now.
Yes.
Going back to the personal assistant, if I'm putting in the work, if I make myself a personal assistant to his work and his will, put in the
Yes.
service, I'm doing everything I can to walk this life and live this life. And I know in the past, he's shown up. And I'm not insinuating that you can earn grace because you can't.
Mm-mm.
You can't. But I know this pattern. He's going to show up. So it gives me a hope. What is that verse? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yep. And you're speaking to that calibration, the
Yes.
calibration that I'm responsible for.
You're responsible for it.
What I'm responsible for in calibration is my attitude. What God is responsible for, or what God helps me with, is He adjusts my perception.
Yes.
But it's gotta be in tandem, right?
Mhm.
If if I have a bad day, if I'm like everything feels like it's going wrong, I'm not getting what I want, I'm pissed off, like, it's just I might be tired and it's all exacerbated, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, just help me, God. Just help me." And really the ticker tape that's going on is like how I didn't get this and how bad this is and how crappy that person is. And like, if my attitude is dark, like, God is probably knocking on the door saying, "Hey, honey, I got something for you."
Mhm.
And I am like, I'm in the dark. I'm
Mhm.
not even able to receive it. So that that attitude, like you just said, looking back and saying, "Okay, what what has happened in the past?" You know, I'll give you an example. Uh, I left corporate. 5 years ago, I had I had this thing where, like, every 2 weeks, like, this big chunk of change would show up
Crazy, huh?
yeah, it would show up in my bank account, and then all these stock options would show up, and, like, somebody paid for my insurance, and, then I'd get these bonuses, these big chunks of change that would just come, and, you know, they gave me what they wanted me to do, and I did it, and
Green money shows up.
yeah, and it was secure, in a worldly way. So then I decided to go out on my own. And I had somebody who said, "If you want personal development, go start your own business." I was like, "Whatever, I got this." Oh, yeah. And so this whole idea, I've been very blessed. The idea of financial insecurity, like, was not a big player in my life for a long time. And when you go from these big chunks of change to, like, starting at ground zero, there's a contrast there. So, it was a little scary, and our brains have this negativity bias that love to take it to an extreme.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be homeless," and, like, "I'm not
I'm
gonna,"
gonna starve.
"Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And, um, what I had a friend say, she said, "Well, money comes from everywhere, Carrie." And I was like, "What? No, money comes from my direct deposit and, my stock option, my, financial." I'm not gonna I'm not gonna plug a financial thing right now. So, um, it was shifting that perception that, wow, money does come from everywhere. And what I started seeing is, like, wealth looked very, very different.
Hmm.
And I was able to look back and say, "Well, wait a second. All has always been provided." Doesn't mean I was, like, swimming in Lamborghinis or anything, but, to set my sights on, "Wait a second, I'm provided for every day." And to have that faith, like, on paper, my financial situation might look a lot different, but man, I am provided for every day.
What's the value of you walking in your purpose
It's priceless.
versus your stock options?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's that alignment. Yeah.
I applaud you because
Thank
I got nervous thinking about what you just said. Like, I felt my heart speed up a little bit. I currently work in corporate,
Yeah.
and all those things you mentioned are real things. They're very real things, and they give you this sense of stability, and you feel good about it, you know?
Mhm.
You I don't know about you, but I even get to the point some days that I have to check myself of a little bit indignant, like, "I worked hard for this,
Mm.
okay? I
Mhm.
deserve this big check. I deserve these coins." And I have to take a step back and say, "Whoa, yeah, gotta be careful there. Gotta be very careful there." But just hearing you talk about it made me anxious, so I applaud you for taking that leap and growing to the point, because I imagine it didn't happen immediately, of saying, "Wealth looks different now."
Yeah.
What does wealth look like for you now?
That's a great question.
We know it ain't Lamborghinis.
It's not Lamborghinis. Hey, I would drive one. They're kind of fun. Uh, I'm not going searching for one. But wealth today is really in connection. Like, I am rich in connection, not only to God, but the communities that I get to be part of, the relationships I get to be part of, the conversations that I get to be in are just, they're so expansive and free, and uh, my heart sings. And it's not, the wealth is that, uh, I have very little have to.
Mhm.
Even the responsibilities I have are in the get to column.
Mhm.
So I am like, if my get to is 90% of my life, like, how could I be any richer?
The freedom.
Mhm. Oh, there's the word. That's
The
my word
freedom.
for the year,
That's your
actually.
year? It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Hey, how about that? Mine is service.
Oh, yes.
Wow. Look at there.
Yeah.
We managed to fold our words into the podcast today. That was not planned.
None of it's planned.
No, that's true. That's true. That's true. That is true. I've enjoyed this conversation. I know it's a little bit of a departure from our typical what's the question that we're going to address today, and then we say the word grace 19,000 times over the course of 30 minutes. But I think this conversation really highlights at least what I feel in my heart, that you don't have to say the word to talk about it. It's like love. I don't have to say I love you 1,000 times for you to feel loved if I'm showing you love, you know? So
Mhm.
I think it can be embedded in any conversation if your sights are set appropriately.
Absolutely. What is, can you the word tool keeps coming up, or strategy, like, what do you do to recalibrate?
I have a variety of things. Um, I don't do very well with sitting still. It's not my strength.
Mhm.
Um, but when I focus, I can sit still. So I listen to a lot of music, 'cause music gets me into my quiet space, which is a little bit of an oxymoron because it's not quiet at all. The louder it is, the better, as a matter of fact. So I turned the music up and I
Yeah.
put on my favorite song to recalibrate my energy, to shift the atmosphere.
Mhm.
Okay. So I might turn on, there's a song I really like called Secret Place. It's an old song.
I've
But I
loved
like the
that
Amber
song.
Bullock version. And
Mhm.
I might turn that up really, really high. And it recalibrates the atmosphere I'm in, whether it's the car or the house. And it puts me in a zone of quiet. Now my thoughts have dialed down and my anxiety has dialed down and my sadness or whatever it is, stress. It could just be the busyness of the day. It doesn't even have to be a thing. It could be the busyness. It
Mhm.
stops. And before I know it, I'm singing along and I'm in a position, I'm in a posture to receive and hear from God. And it doesn't take long because the song's only like 4 minutes long, you know. It doesn't take forever. That works for me. And I typically do it in the evening. Every morning, I start every day like that. I end every day like that in the shower, loud music, quiet time for me. Not quiet at all, but quiet time for me. But
Yeah.
sometimes in the middle of the day, I have to just stop and turn it on. If I'm not able to stop, I just turn it on in the background because even in the background, it can get me in a better place. That's my recalibration. And it's not some long, lengthy, onerous process. I don't fast for 40 days and go into the wilderness. It's a tune up, if you will. Let me tune my hearing
Mhm.
to drown out all the stuff. It's a filter of sorts. Filter that out so I can hear this. And sometimes I hear, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes the gift is really just the dialing out of the noise.
Yeah.
And my shoulders start to relax, and that heaviness starts to lift. And I'm so grateful that it happens rapidly. It happens very rapidly. Now, I had a bad day a couple weeks ago, and it lasted for hours and hours and hours and hours. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm notorious for saying I don't have 2 bad days in a row.
Mhm.
I believe that. I'm gonna force it, okay? Well, at about the 10th or 11th hour of this day, I was like, "Ugh, tomorrow's not looking too promising either." I started to get a little nervous about it. I was like, "Oh my goodness." Turn the music up. And I didn't walk into I usually walk in pretty confidently knowing this is gonna change the atmosphere. I didn't. because I was so in the pit of what I was in. But I know from the past, I know in hindsight, I know my patterns, I know how he shows up, that if I just step out on a little bit of faith, a little bit of a mustard seed, and that's all I had that day, I'm going to turn it on. I'm not going to pay attention to it, and we're going to see what happens. And it worked. And then I was amazed. I don't know why. Like, I should have expected it to work, but I couldn't get the strength to do that. I couldn't get the strength to have that big, mangrove tree faith. No, I had mustard seed this day.
Yeah.
And it still worked. For me, that's a long answer, but for me, that's my recalibration process. Even when I don't feel it, even when I don't have the confidence for it, even when I don't know how it's going to turn out, I'm going to do the things that I know work.
Absolutely.
And he's going to show up.
Absolutely.
And that recalibrates me. What about you?
Oh, I have many tools in my quiver. The first one is the awareness that I can.
Oh, yes.
So that is the biggest one. And I didn't always know that. I had no idea. I thought that anything that was going to help me was going to come out from outside of me. It made me a little crazy for a while. But, I have the first one is just take a deep breath. It's like just pause and acknowledge, like, okay, this train is not going down a real good track. And just it's for anybody who has not tried this, or for people who do, it's a very courageous act to stop and take a deep breath. There's some kind of faith that, like, often when I'm taking a deep breath, the train that's running is there's not enough time, or this has to get done, or how am I going to? Like today, I know these are the things where it's like, wait a second, what world am I living in? Like, whose world am I living in? So a deep breath. I have an alarm on my phone that goes off at 2:00 every day that just says, who's in charge? And I love that. And I need those reminders. It doesn't matter how long I am in this recalibration game and, like, the excitement over grace, like, I'm a human. And for whatever reason, I mean, I have some theories. I have to be reminded.
But
Part
you
of
know that.
I do know that. And sometimes I even forget that, or I wish it wasn't true.
Yeah. Listen, you're not by yourself. I have an alarm on my phone every day at noon. It alternates every other day.
Uh-huh.
So, like today, it said, imagine it, claim it, receive it, which can apply to anything you're going through any given day, right? Imagine it, claim it, receive it. And on an alternate day, it says world changer, vessel. So, imagine it, claim it, receive it is pull yourself out of this, Ebony, get out of this rut you're in, imagine it better. Imagine it fixed. Imagine it healed. Imagine it stable. Claim it. Receive it. And the other is, do you know who you are? You're a world changer. You're a vessel. You know what God put in you? Do you know how great he made you? Do you know how great he is and he lives in you? So one is to motivate me. The other is to remind me.
Absolutely.
You said that it takes a lot of courage to stop and breathe. It's that moment of, hey, I know this. It's ain't doing too bad here. Get it together, kid.
In a
So
nice way.
in a nice kid, kid's better than some other words we could say. Get it together. So I'm right there with you. And my prayer is that this particular episode does not feel all over the place, because it all connects. God is not our personal assistant. We're his. Sometimes you have to change your lens. You got to set your sights. Recalibration is necessary at times. your perspective, the way you're seeing these things that are going on in your life is important. And I don't think either of us is proclaiming to understand it all or get it all. There are definitely some things I see on the news on a daily basis. I'm going, oh my goodness,
Yes.
what is happening in the world? So there's no magic juice or magic song or magic alarm on the phone that's going to make all that come into perspective. But I still trust him. I still trust him. And I think his grace is sufficient.
Absolutely. I agree. I
What's
agree.
your takeaways?
Well, as I've said, and I think I've said on many of these, you wrap this up so well. So yes to all that you said. And also that my perception, I can't make my perception change. I watch it evolve or shift based on my experience and the grace I'm given. So my responsibility is my attitude, my willingness, my openness um, to show up, to receive, and it's in my experience that that perception can shift. Like many of the things that we talked about today, I couldn't have had this conversation a couple years ago because
Mhm.
it wasn't here yet. And next week, a month from now, 2 years from now, it may be a very different conversation. I mean, I think the pull through is that, there's God and grace and favor and mercy and all of these things, but my perception of them is always shifting. I always like to say, um, subject to change. This is what I see today.
Right.
And that used to really, I had a lot of fear around that because I was always trying to grab onto some idea and like make it concrete because it felt secure, kind of like those paychecks that kept coming
Mhm.
into my bank. And the only security, the only constant I have today is that I got a God and grace is among us.
I like it. I
Yes.
like it. I'm with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is so good to be back here. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
I look forward to doing some of these in person this year. Just throwing it
Hey,
out there.
there's a thought.
Yes. Yes.
They're gonna see just how short you are and how tall I am.
I'm okay with that.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. That would be really exciting.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. It
And
is storming cats and dogs here right now
is it?
in the great state of North Carolina.
Well, it looks like it's heading up my way
Yeah, it's a
after
little
you.
dark in your background as well.
Mhm.
Just a reminder to everybody listening and to each other, the stars are still shining even when it's cloudy outside. Okay?
Absolutely.
They don't go away. His grace is still there, even when your perception or your perspective has clouds. Part them
Yes.
or move out the way. Go around them. See the stars. They're up there. They're up there. It's been fun, Carrie.
It's been super fun for all listening. If you have a question that you want to pose to us, we are happy to uh, to put it on one of these episodes,
For
or even
sure.
a theme, anything. And thank you for your time and attention and tuning in. And what do we say, Ebony?
We say grace out.
Grace out.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you, and share it with a friend. Also, please be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. We hope you're leaving with another pointer to grace, a new perspective that will light it up in your own life. Until next time, be well, be bold, be kind to yourself, and be on the lookout.